right. Hello, everybody. My name is Dominic D'Andrea, and I am the Director of Community Engagement at Queens Theatre. Thank you so much for joining this week's QT Make series with our Director of Education, Richard Hinojosa, making his grandmother's flour tortillas. Now, I know that so many of us love tacos, and yesterday was both Taco Tuesday and Cinco de Mayo, a clash of the titans of culinary delights. And so today, it's a really great thing to be able to jump in and learn how to make the most delicious tortillas you've ever had right in your own home. And this tutorial should show you just how easy it is. Before we get going, I just want to spotlight a couple of things. Every Wednesday for the last month, we've been doing the QT Makes. And next week, I will have my friend Marissa coming to us, who won the runner-up position on this last season of Great American Baking Show, and I think received 1 or 2 Paul Hollywood handshakes, for those of you following around who know what that means. And she'll be teaching us how to make kitchen sink or garbage cookies, which is cookies with whatever we have in our pantries, and we just kind of throw it all in there and see what happens. She is an amazing baker. And then this Friday, we conclude this round of Queens Theatre Story Circles, Friday at 1 p.m. We're just asking the general question, how are we doing? Which will be sharing thoughts and ideas and stories just about sheltering in place this past 2 months and how we've been doing, what we've learned, and where we are right now. And on Friday nights at 7:30 p.m. for the next month, our friend David Lawson is hosting Queens Storytellers Online. It's a show that was the first thing that got canceled when we had to shut down our theater and shelter in place. And we're thrilled to be able to bring that back for a month of online shows where David will be hosting 4 or 5 storytellers each week at 7:30 p.m. sharing stories, which will also be broadcast on our Facebook page at Queens Theatre. For this session, if you're baking along or later on if you make these tortillas, please use the hashtag QTMakes. That's like Queens Theatre QT Makes. And we'll collect all those pictures and your stories about your tortillas and what you've made, and we will share that out on our social medias later. Also, just check out QueensTheatre.com throughout the month. The education department or new play department, other programming will start to bubble up this month as well. And we've been doing a whole lot. So keep checking our webpage for details and updates. Sign up for our mailing list at QueensTheatre.com or .org rather, or .com. I'm so sorry. And we will continue to push the goodwill out into the world. So this series, totally dedicated to us who are sheltering in place, looking at our resources, trying to figure out how to make the most of what we have available to us. We recognize that it's a privilege to be on the internet. We recognize that having pantry ingredients is a privilege. So there are unlimited substitutions for these ingredients to try to just MacGyver together anything that we have to just make tasty and delicious meals at home. And wherever you are zooming in from today or joining us on the Facebook feed, we hope that you are happy. We hope that you are well supplied and that you have everything that you need and that you are in good spirits, that we see and recognize you, members of our community. You are very dear to us. And today, this is for you. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Richard Hinojosa to the screen. All right, there he is. Hey Richard, how's it going?
Good. How are you, Dominic?
Ready for some tortillas?
Yes. Fresh and delicious. I'll never want to buy store-bought again. Thanks for the introduction.
Take it away.
You know, guys, really, if you're not tuning in to the Queens Theatre's Story Circle and also the storytelling series, please do. It was fantastic. I was on last Friday. It was so well curated. It's so much fun. I really, really enjoyed it. So also, I'm doing some education videos. We are doing a sing-along. If you're a senior citizen, you want to join us for our sing-alongs with seniors. join us on our Zoom calls for that as well. Reach out to QueensTheatre.org to find out more information about how you can join our sing-alongs. All right, so welcome everyone. Like Dominic said, we're going to be making some wonderful fresh tortillas today. I am super excited to show you how easy it is to make tortillas at home. This is going to be since it's a tortilla tutorial, it is the tortorial. I think that's what we're calling it, isn't that right? Thank you. The tortorial, tortilla tutorial. We're going to have some fun. And, I wanted to tell just a little bit about sort of the background of like my family and tortillas. I remember going over to my grandma's house and getting a chance to eat her homemade tortillas, which were like, they were like fluffy little pillows. They were just the best. And I have tried to reach that, but I don't think I ever will. She is the best, but I try to get close as I can. And my dad actually tells me about how his mom used to make tortillas every day, and he would go get some meat at the slaughterhouse, and they would come and make tortillas every day. It was an everyday thing, and I loved learning about the history of my family of tortilla making. A little bit about the history of tortilla making. Obviously flour tortillas came later. The original tortillas were corn, and a lot of people think of like authentic Mexican tortillas as being corn tortillas, and I love corn tortillas. They are fantastic. I do have, and I'll talk a little bit about the ingredients for corn tortillas. They're even easier to make. But corn tortillas originated, obviously in the Americas. Corn and potatoes and things like that were American crops. And the early Americans were making corn tortillas just unleavened, and the corn tortilla that we see like as sort of the modern version, or the prototype of the modern version of what we look at corn tortilla now, was actually done by the Aztecs, and they used to call it Tlaxcali. Tlaxcali was a corn tortilla, and looked very much like what we might think of a corn tortilla today, a flat unleavened bread, And Tlaxcali was Nahuatl, which is the Aztec language for something baked. So that was very simple, Tlaxcali. They actually figured out something very cool, because when the Europeans came, and they started exporting corn, and they were just eating corn, just plain, and grinding corn and eating it like that. The Mesoamericans had actually figured out that if you soak it in lime, it breaks it down, takes the skin off, and they can feed that to the animals. And also, it helps the body digest niacin, a vitamin B. And so there are a lot of people who are getting this particular disease, this disorder about, where you had lacked niacin and tryptophan and amino acid. But the early Americans, the Mesoamericans and early North Americans had figured out that if you mix it with lime, it's called nixtamal. It helps it helps your body digest those vitamins. So, side note, yesterday was Taco Tuesday, and like Dominic said, and Cinco de Mayo, so that is so fantastic. I of course made tortillas yesterday, and I made carnitas, a roast pork. In honor of that, we had some Corona, not the virus, just the beer. And we celebrated Cinco de Mayo, and I made some frijoles and some rice, and it was a fantastic meal. But actually, there was a fantastic place called Nixtamal that used to be this place that me and the Queens Theatre friends used to go to for Taco Tuesdays back in the day. They eventually closed that location and moved to another place, but Nixtamal was one of my favorite places. Nixtamal is the word for the maza mixed with lime. So without further ado, I'm going to talk a little bit about, so I wanted to mention also, and as a part of the history, we originated with a corn tortilla, but flour tortillas were brought in by Europeans because wheat was not an American crop. It was not a New World crop. Wheat was brought in from the Old World. And so they started making wheat tortillas. They started adding fat, which was, of course, lard. It was the only shuffleable fat at the time. So they added lard, water, salt, and wheat, ground up wheat. And they started making flour tortillas. And there's actually a lot of different cultures who claim the origin of making wheat tortillas, from Lebanese, or sort of like the pita bread, and some Jewish immigrants coming in the 1700s. Also, German immigrants in Texas claim ownership of the original flour tortilla. So there's a lot of different schools of thought on who first created the flour tortilla. But I love flour tortillas. Not that I don't love corn, but I love a good flour tortilla. It reminds me of my grandma, who I love. She actually passed away not too long ago, just before my son was born. Her name was Josephine. My son's middle name is Joseph in honor of her, because when my wife and I were trying to get pregnant, we came up to her coffin and said, "You want to help us?" And literally that same week, later that week, we found out we were pregnant. So, Joseph, Luke Joseph. Hey, Luke. Anyway, so making flour tortillas today. Here's a few things that you're going to need. I'm going to start off with just the items that you'll need. So a whisk, a wire whisk, and a nice large bowl to mix in. You will need your rolling pin. You will need a measuring cup. Now I have this little thing that kind of slides back, but some people have the little cups, the different sizes. This little guy measures really cool, and it's a little one piece. I like it. You'll also need these sort of measuring cups. I'm just going to use the cup and go with it. I have a butter knife to cut the manteca, the lard. And you'll also need like a rubber spatula if you want to put it into your measuring cup and sort of dig it out, okay? When you're cooking your tortillas, obviously you want to keep them warm, so you have a tortilla warmer. This is a cute little Mexican tortilla warmer I got at Mercado in San Antonio. Right. And you also have something to measure out your water. You're going to need some hot water to make your dough. Now, for making the ingredients, you will need white flour. I'm going to bring this up here. I know we're getting a little washed out. This is actually nice white flour. My mom said from San Antonio, as you can see, and I really appreciate that. She even says flour in Spanish. And una paloma blanca. And so she sent me this from San Antonio.
Hi, folks. Sorry, we've got a little bit of a technical difficulty. Richard, if you can hear me, we see it. Step back from the camera and put yourself back in microphone range. We can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me?
All good. Thank you.
Okay, good. Okay, so yeah, that's my flour. You're going to use a little bit of salt, a little bit of baking powder. And you can use, for the fat, you can use just about anything. Now, when I first told my parents I was going to be doing this, I said I was going to use shortening, and they're like, yeah, no, that's really not how it's done. So, yes, I'm using the manteca, lard. I'm using lard. But if you don't want to do that, you can, of course, use shortening. You can also use butter. And just so you know, just for a quick, easy reference, you're going to use a 1/4 cup of any of these fats, and a 1/4 cup is 1 stick of butter. That's easy to remember. You can also use a liquid vegetable oil as well. So those are the ingredients that you'll need. And I believe we have the list of the amounts. 2½ cups of flour is what I make, because I have a family of me and a 1-year-old. So 2½ cups and about a cup of water will get me, I can usually make about 9 to 10 dough balls out of that. And that's about as many tortillas as I want to make for one day. We'll eat those all. I don't want to have a whole lot of leftover tortillas, because it's something that you want to sort of make daily and eat fresh. I think they're much better than that. You can heat up the next day, but they're not going to last much longer than that. So let's go ahead and start mixing. Like I said, we're going to start off with 2½ cups of some flour. Now I use a nice white flour. You can also use a wheat flour.
We got a question from the audience here asking if that flour is a special flour, a specific special flour.
It's not. Well, I'll tell you what, it's special to me because it was sent from my mom from San Antonio. But other than that, no, it is just a plain white flour, all-purpose flour. Now, the recipe is pretty forgiving. It's okay if I go over a little bit. I try not to pack it in too much. Now, for me, my little measuring cup actually has my cup measuring cup actually has a line in the middle So I can actually take this up to about halfway, and I can see on the inside that I'm about halfway to go 2.5 instead of pulling out another measuring cup and having to wash that. You know what I mean? I always try to limit what I have to wash. Now, what I do at this point is I also pour a little bit more into my cup, and I just set that aside because I'm going to use that to flour my cutting board for rolling out and to flour the balls a little bit as I roll them out to make sure they roll out nice and easy. And I'm going to flour, put a little flour on the rolling pin just to make sure nothing sticks. So next I'm going to take my baking soda, I'm sorry, baking powder, and I'm going to do 1 teaspoon, just 1 teaspoon. I try to level it off as best as I can, but like I said, this recipe is pretty forgiving. If you go a little bit over, you'll be fine. Next, I'm going to take a half teaspoon of salt. Now, this is the part where we do the sort of dance of the mixing of the dry ingredients. So you want to make sure that your dry ingredients are mixed really well. I use a wire whisk. But I suppose you can use your hands if you want to. But I mostly just use my wire whisk and whisk it around really good. You want to do this for at least a minute or two to make sure that your baking powder is nice and distributed and your salt is nice and evenly distributed all throughout the flour. So make sure. So we do a little dance. You want to do an interpretive dance with the mixing of the dry ingredients? We're going to have the incomparable and the enigmatic dance of the mixing of the dry ingredients. Woo, woo, woo! With Baby Luke. Baby Luke making his debut. Yes, thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. We're mixing the dry ingredients.
You can use the dance in the kitchen.
Everybody dances in the kitchen. At least I do. Now, if you're cooking at home, I do recommend that you play some music for yourself because it just makes dancing in the kitchen that much better. Okay, so once you have your dry ingredients mixed, nice and mixed, you won't be able to really tell, but nice and mixed, you're going to cut in your lard. Or, like I said, it's going to be a 1/4 cup of any of these fats. 1/4 cup of shortening, 1/4 cup of liquid oil, or a 1/4 cup of butter, okay? Now for the hard ones, for the solid ones, lard, butter, and shortening, you want to do it on this step. If you're using liquid, you want to do it on the next step when you're adding water. So you add the water and the liquid oil at the same time. For this one, you cut it in and you work it up for the solids, okay? Now, manteca comes in a nice big block. And like I said earlier, sometimes having to stick it into a 1/4 cup and then stick it into a 1/4 cup and then measure it out, it gets a little weird, right? Can everybody see that? Right, that's a block, right? I'm going to cut about a 1/2 inch off this block. And that equals about a 1/4 cup. And this way I don't have to use the rubber spatula to dig it out. But if you're using shortening, you're going to have to do that. Butter, you can just use your hands and work it right in. I would recommend that you leave your butter out before you start this. It'll make it a lot easier for you to work it in. So, taking my butter knife, I'm going to cut, like I said, about a 1/2 inch off this block. It'll look like that, not that much, okay? And I'm going to drop that into my flour. Okay, so if you wear a ring, if you are a married man or woman, this is the part where you want to take that off. Yes. It's going to get a little bit messy. So when I take this part, you can see there's a big lump of pork fat right in the middle of this. I'm going to cover it up a little bit with my flour, cover it up a little bit with my flour, and then I'm going to start to squeeze it in. Just kind of squeeze it in, squeeze it in. You'll notice that sometimes flour is going to fly out of the bowl. Sometimes it's going to fly on you a little bit. That's how you know you're doing it right. Sometimes when I'm doing my flour, I do a little bit of zip, zap, zap, zip, zap, zap. But you want to work the flour in, the fat into the flour as best you can until it all just sort of disappears and your flour just kind of looks like flour that's maybe a little bit shaggy. Okay? But I like to work it between my hands, zip, zap, zap, zip, zap, zap. Just make sure that it all disappears and make sure it coats the flour really well. You want to make sure it coats the flour really well. So I'll show you what it kind of looks like when it's done. I'll see if you can see pretty well. I know that when you're doing this, you're like, when am I done with this? But I figure if you do it for about a minute or two, really get it going. This is another part that you can dance. Zip, zip, zap, zap. And really just work the flour, work the fat into the flour, and it'll be happy. Now, you're going to be mixing some hot water into here in just a sec. And so all that flour is going to absorb the water. All right, that looks good. That looks good. I'll show you what it looks like. It doesn't look much different. You just kind of coated your flour with fat. Okay, so it's not going to look all that much different unless you leave it squozen. You can just kind of cut it out. And as you can see, it looks just like that. Anybody see that? Okay. Yeah, just kind of squozen out. Just squozen out.
Just one quick question from Sergio Valenzuela. How many tablespoons of butter?
Whole stick is a quarter cup. Like this whole stick, quarter cup. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 tablespoons. And you know, if you're not using lard, I think my favorite thing other than lard to use is butter. It tastes fantastic. It tastes buttery and delicious. They are really, really good with that. Okay, good. I made a mess. That's how I know it's working. Zip, zap, zap. Woo! All right. The water out of my faucets comes out only a little bit hot. So I like to pop it in the microwave just to ensure that it's as hot as I want it. Because I like the water to be good and hot, because it helps to sort of break down the fat and just kind of coat the flour even better. Now, once we're done with the water, once the water is heated, we're going to pour in about half of it. You know, making a dough is one of those things where you want to pour it in gradually. So I'll pour in about half at first, and then I'll pour in slowly a little bit more and a little bit more until it's just about done. Comes together in a nice big ball. Now, just so you know, I also have this manteca. And, you know, making corn tortillas is actually really easy. There's no fats in it. And all you do is 2 cups of manteca. 2 cups of maza, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and 1.5 cups of water. Boop. Mix it in and mix your dry ingredients. You put that first cup of water in, dough starts to come together, and then you, like I said before, you start adding gradually a little bit more water, so you might have a nice big ball of dough. Now, one of the easiest ways to smash out a corn tortilla is to cut a Ziploc bag out, put it between that, and then you can smash it under a big book. You can also use like a big dry pan, like a pan, smash it down, and then you toast them on your grill. No problemo. So, 2 cups of maza, half a teaspoon of salt, and a cup and a half of water if you want to make corn tortillas. Pretty much the same steps. Like I said, pour in a little bit of the water, about half of the water, bring the dough together, and then start pouring it in slowly. You'll make a big ball. You pull out little balls, smash them down.
We've got another question from the audience. Does it matter if you use salted or unsalted butter?
No, it doesn't. I prefer to use unsalted, just so I can measure how much salt I'm doing. But you won't notice a difference between the salt that you put in your dry mix and the salt that's in the butter. I'm just going to let the water get just a little bit hotter before we move on. Now, the prep for this, like I said, it doesn't take very much time. It takes maybe about 10 minutes to pull the dough together. And then there's going to be sort of a wait time where we're going to let your dough sit out for a little bit. And the reason why we want that to wait is it sort of helps the flour absorb all the water, and it inhibits gluten formation, and so it's going to be a lot easier for you to roll out if you let the dough sit for half an hour before you do that. But it is not a necessary step. If you want to make your dough, pull your balls out, and go straight to the rolling pin, you can certainly do that. It's not a completely necessary step. I like to do it just because it makes the rolling out a little bit easier. I set aside some that I made earlier so we can get right to that. Now, I'm going to pour in about half the water to get me started. So I'm going to pour in half a cup of water. Then I'm going to start to bring the dough together. Now, a lot of times when I'm doing that, I'll throw the dough on top of the water and just start mixing it in. And it'll turn into sort of a shaggy mess. It's going to stick to your fingers a lot. This is the reason why you definitely want to take your rings off. And this is what I'm talking about when you got a shaggy mess. I'll show you guys. It starts to look like this. It starts to just kind of come together in a shaggy mess. See that? Yeah. So, once you get your shaggy mess, you want to start pouring in your water gradually. Just a gradual pouring. So I pour maybe another quarter cup. And I'll start to really kind of stick it together. Now what we're really looking for is to make sure that your dough is not sticky. That's when you know it's really ready. Like many doughs, you don't want to overwork it. It's almost there. But you'll know it's ready when it's no longer sticking to your hands. Now I'm going to add a little more water, just so you can kind of see what happens if you add a little bit too much water, okay? It comes out a little bit too wet. You can hear it. You can hear it. You hear that? Too sticky. Okay? Too sticky to my hand. When you know your dough is ready, your hand's going to pull away. So we add just a little more flour. I add it right on top, and I add a little bit underneath. Make some tortillas. Oh yes. Okay. So as it starts to form my ball, as you can see, it becomes a little less and less sticky, a little more dry. That's what I'm looking for, a nice dry dough. I'm going to get all the dough off my hands and make sure it gets into here. All right, it's coming together just nicely, real nice. Like I said, I don't want to overwork it. But when you know it's done, you're going to have a nice dry dough. When you pull your hand away from it, clean hands. Clean hands. A little bit left over when I was sticky. Nothing's going to stick to you. Nothing sticks to you. Nice dry ball of dough. A nice downy is stuff around. Okay. Now, once you have your dough ball, like I said, I pull out about 9 of these, 9 to 10 golf ball size balls. So I'm going to make them about that big. Yeah? About that big. What do we compare them by? As you can see, about the size of that spoon. Not much bigger. Yeah? Right? About the size of a golf ball. Set those aside. I can pull, like I said, about 9 of these. Now, while you're doing that, you want to put your griddle on, and I put it about medium. Generally, as a rule of thumb, if you're into making pancakes, it's about the same temperature for making pancakes as the temperature for toasting your tortillas. Now, once I've done all these balls, I will set them aside, like I said, for about half an hour. And they're just going to allow the flour, the water really absorb into the flour, be absorbed into the flour, and it's going to really get a lot easier to roll out. But like I said, I do have some that are ready to go. Now, once I get a few balls, I'm going to put them on a tray, and I'm going to take them and I'm going to flatten them out. Just slightly. Just slightly. Just pop them, right? And I'm going to put them on a tray covered. And like I said, let them sit out for about half an hour. Okay? And then we'll be ready to roll these guys out. So I have these that have been sitting out, and they're ready to go. I'm going to flour my cutting board. I'm going to put some flour on my rolling pin. And I'm going to take these tortillas, and I'm just going to flatten them down with my palm. Just make it nice and flat. Nice and flat. They'll flatten out to maybe about 3 inches in diameter with your palm, if you do these golf ball size. Then I take my rolling pin, and I'm going to roll them out. And they're going to roll out to maybe about 8 inches in diameter. Now, if you're rolling them out and they're not coming out perfectly round, that's okay. Sometimes they're not going to come out perfectly round. If you have it sort of like way too not round on one side, you can also kind of stretch it like a pizza dough. Stretch it out a little bit, make it more round if you really want it to be a little more round than it came out when you rolled it up, okay? Now, there are 2 schools of thought on toasting these. Toast each on one side, toast it on one side for about 2 minutes, flip it and toast it on the next side. And there's another one where if you toast it on one side for about 10 seconds, then flip it, and then toast it for about 1.5 minutes on that side and a minute, and then flip it back over again, it sort of cooks it a little bit better, seals in the flavor a little bit better, and that's what I like to do. I like to just sort of throw it on the grill on my Kamalo, and just let it sit there briefly. Now, while it does that, I also start to roll out my next one. So I'm just doing one at a time, rolling them out. They're getting ready. I'll flip this guy over. He's not going to look like he's ready. But while that's cooking, I got my next one going. We roll that one out. There we go. Like I said, about 8 inches in diameter. Looking pretty good. You don't need to push them down or anything like that, but sometimes when you're grilling, when you're toasting on the comal here, you will notice some bubbles come up, and that's okay. That's okay. That's how you know it's working. If I see a bubble, I'll take the edge of my spatula and I'll just pop it a little bit if it really works. You don't necessarily have to do that if you don't want to. Now, I probably should have turned my grill on a little bit sooner. It's a little bit cold, but it's getting there. So this first one is just starting to look like a tortilla. What do you like? Think of a tortilla with a little brown spots on it? I'll show you this one.
Question from the audience. Richard, do you use oil for frying?
I do not. Dry grill. Yeah, it comes out nice. Yeah, nice and floppy. A little toasty, right? And my grill will get a little hotter. We'll get a little browner on that. So I pop that into my tortilla warmer. Oh. And I keep these guys going one at a time. We're gonna make some tortillas. All right. This one's taking on a funky shape. I really did. I think that uniquely shaped tortillas is what makes them special. They don't have to be perfectly round. They can have points. They can have peaks and valleys. There we go. It's getting nice and hot. Now, if you have a bigger family, because I was making just the 2.5 cups, you can completely double my recipe very easily. 2.5 cups, do 5 cups, do 2 cups of water, and do 2 tablespoons of baking powder, and a whole cup of lard, and a half a cup of lard. Just double it. Just double the recipe. And you'll be able to feed your whole family. Add a little bubble. I'm just packing it down. And it's looking really good. Really, really nice. Really, really tasty. Ah. Now, yesterday was Cinco de Mayo, and like I said, I made a roast pork. I made some carnitas, and I made some frijoles. So I do have a really nice lunch for myself, because I actually haven't eaten lunch. All ready to go. I'm just warming up the carnitas. We're going to make some fresh tacos. I made some fresh pico de gallo. I have some fresh cut avocado slices and some lime. Now, there's all kinds of things that you can put on your tacos. I love radishes as well. And you can also put some salsa on there, homemade salsa, salsa verde, salsa rojo. Hello, my love. We're going to have some lunch.
What if you can't use regular butter?
Oh, yes, that's right. You know, right now, my son is lactose intolerant. And that means that my wife is also dairy-free, and we're all dairy-free. And so we just use a butter substitute. nice little smart balance, which is actually a really nice butter substitute, and it works just as well for the fats. And you would use it in the same step, the second step, as you would the other solid oils or fats that you're going to put into your flour. Okay. I think it's time to maybe eat some tacos.
That's what we came.
Is that why you came over here? So.
While we're getting those prepared, I do have another question in here. And Kimberly, if you would like, I can actually bring you on microphone.
Sure.
Let's get that going. Kimberly, you are available and can unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you so much for teaching us today.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, I'm sure these will be eaten quickly, but I am wondering if they freeze well. And if so, how would you do that?
I found that they don't freeze well.
Okay.
They really don't. Like I think the best way to store them is wrapped in a tea cloth. If you don't have like a tortilla warmer like I have, like a little a silly little thing that looks like a sombrero. If you wrap them in a tea cloth and just kind of sort of keep them out like you would fresh bread, would sort of be the best way to store them. But I found that when I've tried to freeze them and then reheat them, they were kind of hard.
Thank you.
Yeah.
If anybody else has questions, please feel free to use the raise hand functionality or the Q&A functionality on Zoom.
Thank you, Jay. I sincerely hope that you guys are making your tortillas and that you send me pictures of your tortillas, or preferably send me pictures of the tacos that you eat your tortillas or the burritos. Oh, that's something I didn't mention. If you wanted to make a burrito out of these, you, of course, certainly can. You just want to make your balls a lot bigger. I would say probably about the size, I don't know if you ever played like a handball, or something like that, because a baseball is just too big. That's too big a ball of dough. It won't really work. But so it's a little bit smaller than a baseball and a little bit bigger than a golf ball, somewhere in between. Now, when you're making corn tortillas, they're going to be generally smaller. I like small corn tortillas. About 5 to 6 inches in diameter at the most. Okay. Flour tortillas, I make a little bit bigger, just a little bit bigger. But if you decided to make the corn tortillas and go with the Mazda to make that, definitely make those smaller. I think you'll be happy with them.
Kirsten Kammermeyer has a question for you here. Kirsten, go ahead.
Absolutely not. That's enough from you, Kirsten. Kirsten is a good friend of mine, Jay. Hey, Kirsten.
Hey, Richard.
How are you?
I'm good. This is awesome. It's so fun watching you do your thing, man.
Yeah.
Hey, I missed the beginning. What kind of oil do you use?
I used, did you say oil?
Yeah. Oh, you just
use lard.
Yeah.
Okay. But you don't have to use lard, you can use butter. Okay. It's a quarter cup of lard, a quarter cup of any of the oils. So a quarter cup of lard, quarter cup of oil, quarter cup of butter, quarter cup of shortening.
Right.
And I was telling the audience that, easy reference, a whole stick of butter is a quarter cup. That's easy to remember. Otherwise, you can use your shortening and use it in a measuring cup. And when I measured out my lard, it's in a nice square block, and it's about 1/2 inch wide of a cut out of that to make a quarter cup. This way you don't have to dig it out.
Thank you.
Really special. Thank you, Kirsten. I hope you made tortillas. Send me pictures.
Okay.
All right. I think it might be time to make a taco. I made the most delicious roast pork last night. One of my favorite dishes is carnitas. Before Instant Pot was invented, I always did a slow roast where I would literally get up in the morning and do that, or let it cook overnight and let it just do slow and low and cook my carnitas for 8 hours or so, and just a slow and low. But with the invention of Instant Pot, I can get that same effect in about an hour and a half. So I'm gonna add a little pico de gallo. I'm going to add a slice of avocado. I'm going to put a lime on the plate because it looks good. One taco, so delicious. Everybody see that? All right. Questions, anyone? I hope you're making tacos.
We got a couple of follow-up questions here from the chat. First question is, where can you find lard in the grocery store? Which section do you find that in?
I found it in the baking section.
You might also want to throw out that it may be labeled alternatively as manteca.
That's right. I'll show you that.
Here, thanks.
Manteca.
Let me hold it. You can talk about it.
Okay. But this one is labeled both. See? Manteca.
Sometimes when you talk, I say you can't hear.
And we also have a request in the chat here saying, hey, can we get the measurements and ingredients for corn tortillas and directions of the same for making them? I might suggest that we might do another episode of this that focuses on corn tortillas instead.
Absolutely. Corn tortillas are even easier. Corn tortillas don't actually have any fat in them, so it's just salt, water, and maza. Easy. And I was mentioning earlier that 2 cups to 1.5 cups of water to half a teaspoon of salt, and you got your maza mix. And you're going to sort of do it the same way as we did the flour. When you're pouring in your water, you pour in about half at first, and then you pour in a little bit at a time as your dough comes together. But this is a good brand. I like this one. This is the one I make my tamales with. I make tamales every New Year's. So
we have another question from the audience here. This is from Sergio Valenzuela. Sergio, you are available to talk. Unmute your mic and you're live.
Hey, Sergio.
This is actually the white Vanessa. I'm just using his.
Vanessa.
I just wanted to ask, so can you use olive oil instead of vegetable oil, or will that
Absolutely,
make it?
yeah, you can use any kind of oil that you like, though I wouldn't do anything too flavorful like a sesame oil or anything like that. But you can use peanut oil, you can use canola, you can use olive oil. Sure.
Okay, and did you say oil? When do you put it in? Rather than
I mix the dry ingredients, and then if it's a solid, you do that in the second step. Okay, so you rub it into into the flour. But if you're using a wet oil, liquid oil, then you do it at the same time as the water. You put the water and the oil in together, and you mix it all together.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, folks, we're coming to the end of this. If you have any remaining outstanding questions, please raise your hand or drop it into the Q&A section. Or if you'd just rather that I read it out loud, you can put it into the chat and I will ask it on your behalf. We've got about 3 minutes left here, so let's make the best use of it.
Yeah, guys, please I know it's, Seis de Mayo, but you can carry over Cinco de Mayo into the next day. Oh, I forgot about this part. I know. I'm very brave. My Corona got my lime. My Corona got my lime.
All right, Richard, thank you so much for your beautiful tacos. It was fun to learn. And if anything else comes up, please email us. You can find both Richard and my email on the Queens Theater webpage. Tag your tortillas if you make them on all social media with hashtag QTMakes or email it to us. There is Luke. Luke's going to have some tacos.
Yes, he is.
And thanks to Richard's family for hiding out while this is going on. We do the same thing over here.
I bet you do. Yay. Very beautiful.
All right. Thank you so much, folks. We'll see you next week for Marissa Trochelle's Kitchen Sink Cookies. And enjoy Cesta de Mayo tacos.
Yes. Thank you, Dominic. Mwah. Gracias.